Okay, thank you for being here this morning. Just got done with practice. Obviously, a shorter week, so we have to adjust our schedule. Some asked last week, do we modify practice? You have to when it's such a short week. You try to keep all the basic principles that you have throughout the course of the year, but you lighten the volume some because, again, you don't want to squeeze in a whole week into 6 days. And actually for us and for Oregon State, it's probably less than that because we have a late game and we have an early game this Friday. So you're cutting out almost 2 days. But so we did we had a full practice today. And when I say full, we did our regular plan and we shaved some reps. We shaved the period off, but the intensity was really high. And we're coming right back to work tomorrow as well again. So our schedule is I think our players really appreciate the fact that, we were mindful of the bodies and the rigors of the season, but at the same time did not let up on the things that we must focus on to have success. So that being said, open to questions.
Mario, just a personnel update starting with CJ because he went out for, I believe, like the 5th straight week. It looked like the neck shoulder again. And then an update on Stephen Jones, Kano, left the door open to Panay, and Andrew Johnson as well.
Yeah, CJ took a shot more like in the stomach, rib area, and he is good to go. He practiced today. Stephen Jones, he's he was in protocol. We'll get clearance or no clearance by sometime tomorrow. He looks good. He looks like he's in good shape, so we're very optimistic. You mentioned Andrew Johnson. I did. Panay, I think Panay is going to take, unfortunately, it's an extra week is what he needs. He needs a full 6 weeks. And so we will not have him for this game. I mean, he might be available in an emergency, but we wouldn't put him at risk if there's any chance where he may hinder his progress towards full health. Andrew Johnson is coming along well, but he is not cleared yet. He will be cleared for the bowl game. Who else? Sampson. Sampson is good to go. I know he was a little bit dinged up during the game, but he's good to go. And that's all I have on paper, unless you guys have somebody else. Kano didn't. Kano strained an ab late in the week last week, and he's been rehabbing and progressing fairly well. I would put him as probable. I guess we don't use those terms in college football, do we? I'm thinking back to the so I would put him as he's got a chance to. I mean, he did some work out there today, and he looked okay. He looked okay. So if he progresses, we'll have him, and if not, we'll have to go without him again.
Mario, what did you kind of learn about the Civil War rivalry last year? And obviously, Oregon was motivated last year, having lost the year before. And what's kind of the motivation for your team this year?
Well, I learned the intensity of it, like all rivalries. I know it's the oldest one between the longest, going rivalry between public universities in the country. And I know that, the previous year, that was a pretty intense deal over there in Corvallis. And that intensity carried over to last year's game over here. So let's just say, I've always loved and been used to great rivalries, and this one did not disappoint. In fact, it exceeded all expectations. So, we educate our players on the history and the great ones that have played here and have played over there and all the games that have gone on in between. And it's important for our players to understand how important this game is to everyone in this state. Houses divided, right? Families divided, and that goes with the territory in a rivalry game. But the motivation for us is extremely high. We didn't do too well last time we were over there. And so we talk about a lot of things that are motivating factors, but our team is motivated.
A quick follow-up on that. You said you educate the players. Just curious on what that process is of making them familiar with this rivalry.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talk about the history. The guys that have played here before, some of them come back and share stories with our football players. And we've done that, to help them understand, because I think sometimes when your team has so many guys from so many different parts of the country, you'd hate for them to never understand, how deep-rooted, the feelings and emotions are that go into this rivalry. So, and we'll continue to do that all week long.
Second straight year, Troy Dye had over 100 tackles. Third year in a row, he's led your team in tackles so far. What do you just make of his ability to just consistently every week produce and his importance for this defense?
Great football player that's instinctive and obviously extremely productive. And in my opinion, he's just scratching the surface. I mean, he is. You've seen him. I mean, he's got the specs, long body type, right? Athletic, explosive, nose for the ball, can knock you back, can run by you, can run around you. Oftentimes he's underrated as a blitzer. I mean, he does a great job just finding spaces and open gaps, getting in there, pressuring quarterbacks. Does a great job tackling while blitzing, which is difficult, right? You got to hit certain gaps. You're going 100 miles per hour. You got to put a foot in the ground, redirect, and get a guy on the ground. He does a great job lining guys up as well. So, again, he's so valuable to this football team. It's no surprise that he continues, to produce at such a high level.
Mario, when you're recruiting big guys on either side of the ball, how hard is it to know whether a guy's going to help immediately like Jordan Scott or a guy, 3-4 years in will pop like Cumberlander did the other night? And what's the key to, I guess, a guy like Gus sticking with it?
Yeah, I think you know. I mean, you can never tell. My old coach used to say recruiting is the most imperfect science in the world, and he's 100% right. So you have to be able to project, what's this guy going to be when he gets on campus? If he works hard during his offseason here in high school, what's he going to be like 3 years down the road? And I think Gus is a great example of the 3-year down the road guy who you saw the long body type, you saw the athleticism, knew at the sport, played multiple sports. And so recognition and reaction was, probably something he was getting used to, but as time goes on, he continues to work the same techniques and fundamentals that come with that position, right? The mother of all learning, the repetition, just again and again and again, like peanut butter and jelly, all of a sudden it becomes second nature. Those hips roll, right? Those feet are in the ground, the hips unlock, you get full extension. Now you start using, the gifts that you have, your ability, and he's really showing it. And he's another one that's just now scratching the surface to what he's going to continue to develop into. And then you have, guys on the opposite end of the spectrum, like, the Paneys of the world, where you get to work with a guy like that in camp, and after 3 reps, you're wondering, okay, we got to get this guy. How are we going to get it done? So been around, both sides of those things, and you've been on both sides where it's been disappointing one way or the other, So those things are imperfect, but we certainly were thrilled and blessed to have, a guy like Gus and the way he's playing now. And certainly, we look forward to having a guy like Panay back on the playing field.
The Beavers are in a rebuilding mode. Jonathan Smith, his first year as head coach. What have you seen out of how his game plan and how he runs his offense?
Sure. I mean, you see a lot of explosive playmakers. Obviously, the back has garnered a lot of attention, rightfully so. As a freshman, he's widely considered, one of the best freshmen in the country. The offensive line has done a tremendous job for him. There's a lot of carryover to what you've seen in Coach Smith's history. He does a great job. Great football coach. Extremely smart. They scheme you up pretty well. They understand where the holes are and they go after it. From game 1 against Ohio State to, coming back like they did against Colorado, they continue to churn out yards and points, and they've got a lot of talent. Some of it's young and some of it is not young. You got a very big defensive front, maybe the biggest that we have seen so far. And when they're on point, they hurt you. They can make a lot of plays. So a tremendous amount of respect for them. They've got a good football team, and we know that we'll get their best, just like they're going to get our best.
Hayden kind of touched on it, but just the explosiveness at receiver seems like they've got multiple guys that can be big play threats, and Hodgkins, Bradford, and Hernandez. What do you make of that trio of guys?
Well, they're very disciplined route runners, number one. I mean, they understand their offense really well. They understand coverages. They set you up really well. They're polished route runners, I should say. And they're explosive. They're guys that have legitimate speed. They can create separation. They find soft spots, and they catch the ball with their hands. They're not body catchers. They get their hands out there. They secure the football. They're good with the run after a catch. I mean, there's it's no secret why they're scoring so many points. They've got a really good, really good offense.
You had a couple, I think, previously unheralded walk-ons make some plays. Justin Collins with the catch at the end of the first half. I think Nate Hugliani played the last couple of series on defense. Mm-hmm. What do you see from those two guys, and how impressive was it they stepped up in those spots?
Great, a testament to them and their coaches for bringing them along like they did. Those guys work really hard. Those guys do all the right things all the time. And we're over here, there is no judgment whether you're a 5-year, a 5th-year senior, whether you just walked on. If you're producing and you show that you can be trusted out on that football field, you're going to get a shot. So opportunity now tapped on their shoulder on Saturday, And a huge play by Justin. I mean, absolute humongous play to get us down there right before the touchdown, before the half. And then, Nate Hukalani got himself 14 snaps. If you saw the short yardage play and how he fit in there and made a stop on that, it was an assist on the stop, as well as, he did a great job lining up, helping other guys line up while they were going tempo. He's a really good football player, very smart, very instinctive. He's physical. He's a good linebacker, and we expect those guys to continue to contribute more and more.
Aaron, how much do you make of this week in talking to the team about what's literally at stake here beyond the rivalry itself? Not to take away from it, but obviously when they're in a bit of a rebuild and this is the end of their season one way or another, you guys are playing for bowl positioning. Do you make that part of the conversation and part of the message at all?
I think it's always you always assess yourself, the opponent. You talk about both. We're rebuilding a program too, and to me, that's the biggest focus of anything else. We got to understand where we are, where we're going, and the progress that we've made, and we want to continue it. So I'd say the bulk of the focus is on that. We recognize, again, the good players that they have and the type of play that they have shown that they are capable of on several instances. And, when you watch film, you really get to see a lot of things that probably doesn't make it out there in the media. There's so many times in a game where they're about to close it out or they're about to take it over, and whether it was a fourth down stop or whether it was a miscue, kind of flipped the game the other way. And so we recognize that this team has a lot of good football players, and that's why we have so much respect for them. We're looking forward to playing them.
Oregon State hasn't been afraid to use several trick plays this season. They used several against Washington State. I'm sure you saw that. What do you tell your guys about, especially on special teams, always kind of keeping your head on a swivel?
Play discipline, because if you start telling your players, watch this, watch that, they're going to watch their own job and their own responsibilities. So because we've seen all kinds of stuff on offense and on special teams as well, discipline is at a premium. It always has been. So number one, that can never change. That's always got to be one of the absolute principles and values of what you do. But you show them the tape so that you understand, look, some other teams might have shown one every now and then and maybe not run it. But these guys do. They run it. So don't let your eyes drift. Don't take for granted your responsibility has been taken care of. Make sure that you go through the echo of the whistle and beyond to assure that we don't get surprised by one of those plays, because you saw the kickoff, right? You saw the fake punt. I mean, those are things that are game changers, gaining possessions. And we've got to make sure that we're on the road playing a conference game. We can't give up any possessions.
Not to go back too much, Mario, but certainly you understand the statistics of turnover margin. How much do you think the players appreciate how difficult it was to actually accomplish what they did? How rare it is to be -3 and win, that hasn't happened here in a while. It really doesn't happen almost anywhere, ever. How much do you think your team, not obviously ball security matters, but understands how monumental that really was to pull that off?
I think we're educated to the point where we understand it, how difficult that is to overcome. I don't know if many people really truly understand how hard that is, to have 4 turnovers in a game and still find a way to win. And also some opportunities that we let slip through our hands, to let those happen as well. That's a lot to overcome. So I think it all points to that our guys are understanding more and more that if we are dialed in and if we are locked in to play at the highest level with mental intensity and physicality, that we're a tough team to beat. I think that's the biggest lesson that our guys learn. So, because if we do that, there's a belief in that locker room that there's no bad play, that there's no injury, there's no, tough call that we have to deal with that we can't overcome. So I think that's probably the biggest lesson that we learn in something like that.
With signing day less than a month away and the opening of a weekend now for you guys, do you anticipate to leave the state and go across the country recruiting once the game's over?
Yeah, that'll be natural for everyone in the country. All focus is on everyone's last game. All our focus is completely on this game. And then we do have our banquet on Saturday, since we thought it'd be a good way since the families are probably visiting during Thanksgiving or whatnot, we have them here and we can have our banquet. And then once the banquet is over, we'll be on the road really nonstop until the quiet period comes around, which will be that Sunday before signing day.
You just mentioned Thanksgiving. What's on the dinner table at the Cristobal family Thanksgiving?
I don't think I'll be home, So I think what pizza place is open where they can deliver something? We for us that's like a Friday before a game. So I have the in-laws are in town. I'm sure they'll cook something up. And they do a great job. I know Jessica will do a great job. The boys will chip in and help. It'll be something massive, If my mom was here, there'd be a hole in my backyard, and they'd roast a whole pig back there, and it'd be a mess. And then neighbors would complain and have a fire hazard on our hands. But because that's not the case, I expect a lot of just good old traditional stuff, and I'll swing by before coming back for some film. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. If I don't see you, happy Thanksgiving.